All right, let's talk about coordinate planes and graphing. Basically, this video is just a quick reminder for us. You've probably seen coordinate planes before, but again, we want to be familiar with a lot of vocabulary if we're going to kind of advance our understanding of graphing points and graphing lines in a coordinate plane. So first of all, let's talk about a little bit of vocabulary. So I'm going to take us back over here. If we're talking about coordinates and or maybe a scatter plot, right? Points all over a graph like we just saw on the other screen. We want to know a few different words. So a little bit of vocabulary for us. The coordinate plane, again, is formed by two lines called the x-axis and the y-axis. The x-axis is always going horizontally, and the y-axis will be traveling vertically, and they intersect at the origin. So again, looking at our graph here, vertically we've got our y-axis here, and horizontally we have our x-axis. Crossing at this green coordinate in the middle, right, 0, 0, or what we call the origin. Now, every point that we plot on a coordinate plane is called an ordered pair. It's a set of numbers corresponding, again, to a particular location, and typically they're xy coordinates, x being the first number listed in our ordered pair, y being the second number listed. So again, if we want to plot a point like 3, -2, right, we're on our graph, we're going to travel 3 units to the right and 2 units down, and we could plot, right, a point like 3, -2. So notice we've got 3, -5 there. We would call this, again, parentheses, 3, -2 on our graph. And notice we have a lot of points plotted around here. 2, 6, and 7, 3, both falling up in what we call quadrant 1. Every point in quadrant 1 has 2 positive numbers. If we go to quadrant 2, traveling counterclockwise around our graph here, quadrant 2 has a negative x value. So again, we've gone left, so note -4, 1 would be up in quadrant 2. We went left 4 and +1 in the y coordinate to go to -4, 1. Then we've got quadrant 3, again going counterclockwise once again. The quadrant 3 has 2 negative numbers at all times. So -8 or -9, -8 here would definitely be down in quadrant 3. Okay. Again, coordinate pairs are always written as xy coordinates, also called ordered pairs. So again, we want to be familiar with those coordinates. And then finally, we work our way over into quadrant 4, which is where we put our point 3, -2. Quadrant 4, again, is to the right, so x would be positive, but it's downwards, so again, y would be negative. So very simply, there we go. And again, I know I've been counting out those numbers by ones, because notice I've got labels on my axis here, right? We always want to label our axes, or what it means to label the axis means give value to the tick marks, right, or those increments, and we want to make sure those tick marks are spaced out evenly, right? So again, if I label this line over here, right, 7, well, I know that that's the 7th, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th tick mark, right, or 7th kind of lattice line, we sometimes call them. But again, it's the 7th line crossing the x-axis there on my graph. And again, notice up here, I've got this 3 labeling here. Oftentimes we'll just label all the way at the top, or we'll label the first tick mark. But again, we count evenly after that. So notice if that's 3, 1, 2, 3, I've been counting by ones, right, in all directions. And finally, if we're talking about ordered pairs, we're talking about xy coordinates, we also talk about domains and ranges. Remember, the domain is the list of inputs. We've talked about that before with functions. The domain is a list of inputs. So right now would be the list of x coordinates, and the range would be the list of outputs, or the range of y coordinates. So again, our domain for the red coordinates on our graph right now would include 2 and 7 and 3, as well as -4 and -9. Our range of just the red coordinates, again, would be -8 and 1, and we've got 6 and -5 and 3. And we'd want to probably write those in order, but again, the x's are your domain, the y's are your range. Okay. Now, what can we do with those kind of things? Well, we really want to work our way into, and what we'll do the rest of our chapter more than likely, is talk about how to graph equations and graph lines. Now, you got to be a little bit careful. Right here, we're not going to graph a line purely because we have an equation, but notice the domain is just 5 separate points. Sometimes what we call a discrete graph, it's just 5 separated points. But again, there is a pattern to them, right? So what we want to do is take a table, right? Step 1, let's make a table. Let's plug our 5 different points into our function, right? So if x were -6, I'm going to plug that in for x right there. Now I'm going to quicken up the process. I'm just going to put them on the screen here. But notice every time it's negative 1/3 times what was our x coordinate, right? Our -6 over here or our -3 on the next line. Then we're going to add 2. And again, -3 times -6 would be +2. Plus 2 is 4. And that's our output. So again, our range, I'm going to jump all the way to step 3. Identify the range of the y values. Well, the range, again, is going to be this list of these red coordinates. So again, I'm going to start at 0, work my way up to 4, but our range would just be the list of 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, if I made coordinate pairs out of these, again, this would have been the point -6, 4, and I can plot that on my graph. Now notice on my tick marks, my first tick mark is labeled a 2, so I'm counting by 2's left and right. And notice the fifth tick mark, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, is labeled 10 right now, which means I was also counting by 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. I'm counting by 2's on the y-axis as well. So -6, right, is going to be over 1, 2, 3, because that's -2, -4, -6, and then +2 makes 4. And I'm going to put a point right there, right, for -6, 4. We also need -3, 3. So again, I'm going to go -3 up 3. Remember, I was counting by 2's, so this was technically 1, 2 to get to the lattice line. 3, again, would be partway in between 2 and 4, right? And then I'm going to go up 2, makes 3 right there. I also need to plot the point 0, 2. And I'll need 3, 1, and we'll need 6, 0. So again, 0, 2, remember I'm counting by 2's. 3, 1, again, partway in between those lines. And finally, 2, 4 makes 6, 0. And again, this time and this time only, right, because my domain was purely these 5 numbers, it's not all real numbers where I want to connect the dots because I would want to include 2 or maybe 2.5 or points between these points. I'm not going to connect the line there, and I'm not going to connect the dots. Now, we'll get into drawing lines or connecting the dots in future videos. So keep watching. If you have any questions, talk to your teacher, and have a great day.